Speech acts and events. When people try to express themselves, they do not only produce utterances containing grammatical structures and words, they perform actions via those utterances. These actions are generally called speech acts. The speech acts are commonly labeled as apology, complaint, compliment, invitation, promise, or request. The different kinds of speech acts will depend on the speaker's communicative intention in producing an utterance. The speaker expects his or her communicative intention to be recognized by the hearer, and both speakers and hearers are usually helped in this process by the circumstances surrounding the utterance. These circumstances are called the speech events. It is the nature of the speech event that determines the interpretation of an utterance while performing a particular speech act. For example, if I say, "This tea is really cold," if I say this in a wintry day, this utterance will be interpreted as a complaint. However, in a hot summer's day, it is likely to be interpreted as a praise. Here we can see that one simple utterance can have different kinds of speech acts. Speech acts. The action performed by producing an utterance will always consist of three related acts. A locutionary act, which is the basic act of producing a meaningful linguistic expression or utterance. The locutionary act or elocutionary force, which is the purpose or function we have in mind and is performed via the communicative force of an utterance. And the perlocutionary act or perlocutionary effect, which is the effect we expect to have when performing an utterance. The same locutionary act can count as different elocutionary forces. Here you can see the examples. The elocutionary force of the utterance is what it counts as. The speaker can assume that the elocutionary force will be recognized by the hearer considering two things: elocutionary force indicating devices and felicity conditions. Elocutionary force indicating devices. The elocutionary force indicating device, or IFID, is an expression in which there is a slot for a verb that explicitly names the elocutionary act being performed. This verb is called performative verb. Promise and warn are performative verbs. Most of the time, there is no performative verb mentioned. Other elocutionary force indicating devices can be word order, stress, and intonation. In addition to this, the utterance has to be produced under certain conventional conditions to have the intended elocutionary force. Felicity conditions. Felicity conditions are the expected or appropriate circumstances for the performance of speech acts to be recognized as intended. In everyday contexts, there are preconditions and speech acts. These are general conditions on the participants. This means that they all speak the same language. Content conditions, for example, for a promise or a warning, the content of the utterance must be about a future event, something that will happen in the future. Preparatory conditions, these are significantly different among different elocutionary forces. For example, in a promise, the event will not happen by itself, and the event will have a beneficial effect. In a warning, it isn't clear that the hearer knows that the event will occur. The speaker does think the event will occur, and the event will not have a beneficial effect. Sincerity condition. This is related to the previous conditions. For example, in a promise, the speaker genuinely intends to carry out the future action. And in a warning, the speaker believes that the future event will not have a beneficial effect. The essential condition changes the current state. For example, when uttering a promise, I intend to create an obligation to carry out the action as promised, so my state changes from non-obligation to obligation. When uttering a warning, the utterance changes my state from non-informing to informing about what could happen. So, we need to combine the utterance content, the context, the speaker's intention and the essential condition in order for specific speech acts to be appropriately or felicitously performed. The performative hypothesis. A way to think about the speech acts being performed via utterances is to assume that underlying every utterance there is a clause containing a performative verb which makes the illocutionary force explicit. This is the performative hypothesis. Here you can see the format. The person is followed by the adverb hereby, which indicates that the utterance counts as an action by being uttered. There is also a performative verb and an indirect object, you. For example, I hereby order you that you clean up this mess. These kind of examples are used by speakers as explicit performatives. On the other hand, implicit performative or primary performative utterances might be clean up this mess. This kind of analysis makes clear what elements are involved in the production and interpretation of utterances. However, there are some technical disadvantages to the performative hypothesis. Firstly, uttering the explicit performative version of a command, I hereby order you that you clean up this mess, has a much more serious impact than uttering the implicit version, clean up this mess. In this way, the two versions are consequently not equivalent. Secondly, it is difficult to know exactly what the performative verb might be for some utterances. For example, if I say, you're dumber than a rock, it is okay. But if I say, I hereby insult you that you are dumber than a rock, it is not that good. Finally, the main problem with identifying explicit performatives is that we simply don't know how many performative verbs there are in any language. Speech act classification. There are 5 types of general functions performed by speech acts. First, declarations, which the speaker has to have a special institutional role in a specific context in order to perform a declaration appropriately. The speaker changes the world via words and utterances. For example, a jury foreman may say, we find the defendant guilty. Then, representatives are speech acts which state what the speaker believes. The speaker makes the words fit the world. For example, Susan may say the earth is flat because she believes that. Expressives are speech acts that state what the speaker feels. They express psychological states such as pleasure, pain, likes, dislikes, joy, or sorrow. Through them, the speaker makes the words fit the world. Examples of these are I'm really sorry or congratulations. Directives are speech acts that the speakers use to get someone else to do something, expressing what the speaker wants. They are commands, orders, requests, and suggestions which can be positive or negative. The speaker attempts to make the world fit the words via the hearer. Some examples might be, give me a cup of coffee, make it black, or could you lend me a pen, please? Commissives are speech acts that speakers use to commit themselves to some future actions, expressing what they intend. They are promises, threats, refusals, pledges, and they can be performed by the speaker alone or by the speaker as the member of a group. The speaker undertakes to make the world fit the words via the speaker. An example might be, I'll be back, or if being part of a group, we will not do that. Direct and indirect speech acts. A different approach to distinguish types of speech acts can be made on the basis of structure. There is an easy recognized relationship between the 3 structural forms, declarative, interrogative, and imperative, and the three general communicative functions: statement, question, and command or request. When there is a direct relationship between a structure and a function, we have a direct speech act. And when the relationship between them is indirect, we have an indirect speech act. For example, if I say, "I hereby tell you about the weather," it is a direct speech act, as a declarative is used to make a statement. However, if I say, "I hereby request you that you close the door," it is an indirect speech act because a declarative is used to make a request. What is more, different structures can be used to accomplish the same basic function. For example, if the speaker wants the hearer not to stand in front of the TV, he or she may say, "Move out of the way." Do you have to stand in front of the TV? You're standing in front of the TV. You make a better door than a window. One of the most common types of indirect speech acts has the form of an interrogative, but is not typically used to ask a question. Instead, it is used as a request. For example, "Could you pass the salt?" "Would you open the door?" Indirect speech acts are generally associated with greater politeness in English than direct speech acts. Speech events. An indirect request, such as, "Would you close the window?" Ask whether the necessary conditions for a request are in place. For example, a preparation condition: the speaker assumes that the hearer can perform the action, and a content condition: this concerns future action, that the hearer will perform the action. Asking about preconditions doesn't count as making a request, but allows the hearer to react as if the request had been made. As a request is an imposition by the speaker on the hearer, it is better for the speaker to avoid a direct imposition via direct requests. When the speaker asks about preconditions, no direct request is made. The utterances produced in these situations can be looked as a speech event. This is an activity in which participants interact via language to arrive at an outcome. It may include a central speech act, such as "I don't like this," as a complaint. It will also include subsequent utterances as reactions regarding the central speech act.